This is the Hour Time with Troy By, and I have Ellen Didier. Or is it Didier?
Only if I'm feeling classy. It's usually Didier.
Didier when you want to not be Didier,
like
right?
hors d'oeuvres sounds better than snacks.
No, I haven't met you. I've heard of Red Sage. I've caught up on a lot of the awards that you mentioned that you've won, as I've seen those in the chamber posts or other posts related to different awards that have been won. I've probably have seen your employees. And it wasn't, I mean, I guess, loosely I'm kind of connecting and trying to figure out who's who in the zoo type thing. And I was certainly aware of Red Sage, certainly well aware of you. And quite frankly, I think Abby reached out to me, right?
I have no idea.
I think she reached out to me.
It showed up on my calendar and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about the beginning of Red Sage. So we're talking 2006. I guess for some reason I didn't realize that your husband was involved. So the two of you.
Different last names.
Different last name. What's his last name?
Thompson.
Thompson. Okay.
Dan Thompson.
That's probably why.
Yeah.
Take me back to what was going on in your lives in 2006, where you were already married for a few years, right?
Yep.
That led you to, hey, let's start this. So he's retiring from GE. I guess that's easy for him.
Not for a while.
Okay.
So I mean, he was still a good year.
So he's doing kind of a side hustle to help you get it going.
Yeah, it was really more about what was next for me. I had been 10 years at a former company, another small company, communications company in Decatur, and half the company was promotional products. There were talks about me potentially buying it, but ultimately, if you don't really love or get inspired by half the work, you don't really want to buy it. And then starting a service company, I'd rather just kind of start fresh and do it the way I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step was really, ruling out staying at that company. I didn't have a degree. So my choice was to go to Huntsville, but I was a creative director and there weren't a ton of those jobs out there. And I didn't have enough of an agency background to make the transition to an agency in Huntsville. And I also had two little girls.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to drive to Huntsville and not have the flexibility.
And what were their ages, just for context?
Let's see. In 2006, Emily would have been 6 and Rachel would have been 12.
Okay. So elementary school, one going almost into middle school.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but active ages, that's when soccer's happening and all the stuff like that. So I wanted to be in town. Not a lot of marketing jobs in Decatur at that point. So I was in school also, and this was another factor in the decision. I had never, ever, like you always hear entrepreneur stories of, I was thinking at age 3 I'd start a business. That was not me.
Right.
I did not think I was going to start a business until I was like, I wonder what my next step is, and looked at the options, and that sounded like a viable option. But the reason why I thought I could do it was I had gone back to school for business administration, which was a fluke, because the only reason I went to Athens State was because I could get a year of my experience to apply, like life-based credit to get out of a year. And when you're like working and raising
experiential
kids,
learning, they call it, right?
Yeah, cutting out a year is big.
Yeah.
So I decided Athens State, they did not have a marketing degree, but they had a business administration with a minor in marketing. So I did great there, really. And the finances made sense to me. And then I'd been enough working with other business owners in the previous company when we were working with businesses that I'm like, I'm smart enough to do this, because I've seen some not very strong business owners. And
Right.
I've also know that it's making sense to me. And then Dan, of course, this is the other thing, is I'm kind of a chicken entrepreneur, because the entrepreneurs that have I have a friend who started a business. He was the sole income, had 3 little girls, went into a whole bunch of debt, and he made it work, and he rolled the dice. You hear another friend of mine, her and her husband own a company, but they went into like million plus debt to finance a piece of equipment to like expand their business somewhere. And that's like, I'm not that brave an entrepreneur at all. Dan had a job. We had benefits. If it failed, no big deal. Financially we were okay. So I don't know that I ever could be an entrepreneur that would take the financial risk of like, I don't know if it's a real entrepreneur, but I'm just, like I said, a chicken entrepreneur.
This episode is brought to you by TPG. TPG is the founder of the quality assurance industry and most known for the tagline, "This call may be monitored for quality assurance," which they brought to the call center market more than 26 years ago. They dominate the market with an internationally recognized client base of Fortune 500 brands. They have created the quality standards used by their clients and have defined 307 attributes that they measure to define a great conversation, including complex concepts such as skills associated with empathizing and rapport building with customers. For more information on TPG, visit them at tpginc.com. A heavily leveraged entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and we've scaled everything without debt, and done it where, each part of the business, we funded the next part of growth just from the business. So, I'm pretty financially conservative.
So tell me about that first client.
First client. So I start a business, and so Red Sage is going. We're at our house, and I'm at the desk, and I get a call from Ed Nichols, the current superintendent of, he's in Madison, and he called me from Decatur City Schools, where he was assistant superintendent there, and he's like, I have a project for you. And so that was one project, and then the other one that...
Now, how did he know you?
I had started volunteering at the chamber and participating in chamber, and just starting to do a lot of activities. Trying to think, I don't think he was a client at the previous company. I was really careful not to take previous clients from him.
But somehow he was aware that you were starting this endeavor.
Yeah, I knew him well.
Okay.
So I was pretty well networked in Decatur even at that time.
Gotcha.
And I had enough of, and the chamber, I'm just such a big chamber fan, period, whether it's, Huntsville Chamber's great, Limestone Chamber's great with Pammy. Decatur Chamber was my sales force. It was not because they were referring me, but because they gave me the networking opportunities. So the first person I hadn't met came through a chamber recommendation or somebody, a networking thing, and it was Eddie Allen at Osco Interiors, which is office furniture. And that was my first print piece. So, it
printing for like mailers, flyers.
It was just a brochure on their services.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was exciting.
It was.
I
tell you, nothing's as exciting as getting the first piece of junk mail that you designed in the mail. That's exciting. That's when you know you've made it.
I can't throw it away. I made that.
Exactly.
That's awesome. And then from there, it's just word of mouth.
A lot of networking, so I'm pretty well networked.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And I this is a relationship business, so did a lot of that. I'm good at what I do, so a lot of that. And there weren't a lot of options in Decatur. I think there was one other agency, but in our startup, it was funny. We just added another team member, Tahani, as our new web project manager. She started last week. And we just had her orientation Tuesday on the company history, where we've been and where we're going. And I talk a lot about early positioning in the orientation because it explains a lot of our client base and where we've been and why we look today like we were. And it was very much reflective of decisions I made super early on. So early on, the early positioning was that I knew that I was a good designer, like a good business designer, and I was strategic, but I didn't have a degree, hadn't been trained, didn't have an agency background, was not artsy enough to be a real graphic designer. And so I knew I couldn't really be an agency at that time.
Now, real quick, the knock you're giving yourself and not having a degree is more of just for marketability and having the credential.
Yes.
Versus the knowledge.
Yes,
like, you can do it, but
job.
How is someone, they're going to look at your resume, if your CV, if you will, and be like, oh, you don't have a degree. What does that mean? That's the concern, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I trust myself enough that I have so much grit and intelligence that I'm going to get stuff done. The degree was interesting, and it's a backup plan. But early positioning was very much saying, okay, well, where can I be strong? And it was an early content management system. So I started with web as the focus area because I could work with a lot of industries or companies, small businesses that didn't really want to work with an agency. But they were in the days in 2006 where more and more were realizing, I need a website. And occasionally I might want a brochure or a trade show booth or something like that. So our client base early on, we still host over and do security management for over 200 websites. And a lot of that was the early positioning of getting really, really good doing websites for a whole diverse group of small businesses. It saved us during the Great Recession because we weren't locked up in car dealers and banks like the agencies were, and everyone went out of business in Huntsville during the Great Recession. And we grew because I saw the opportunity and added a salesperson. But early on, it was very much focused with web as the leader. Our early materials, all I talked about was web. But if you looked at our billings, I could sell in using web as the entry point, and our billings were always 50% web and 50% strategy and design. So I did fine as being an agency with all the different services. When the Great Recession hit, overnight we became a integrated ad agency because there was a wide open Huntsville, and I had all the skills in a portfolio at that point, so I could be competitive. And that's one of the reasons why, actually a primary reason why, we've built such a strong reputation in Huntsville despite being a Decatur company, is because we've been around for so long, and I didn't have competitors in Huntsville for 5 years.
Really?
Probably until 2012 when they started popping up again, but which is a good and bad thing. But yeah, it was really an interesting time.
So that recession, if as you call it, was about 3 years in, right? Wasn't that like
yes,
09, 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One way to look at it is during those years we paid more in taxes in our business than GE did that year.
Oh.
And I probably added more employees.
Yeah. Well, and then as you mentioned it, so I guess in 2012 you're seeing the prevalence of more companies just due to more. There's more
social. Yeah,
the social media, the tools are easier. Like, I look at when I started doing live streaming 10 years ago compared to now. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's a different universe.
It's so easy, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean your show's going to be good.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you should have a show, but it's super easy to do.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I think, it's all integrated. And
yeah, but for us, it wasn't the tools. Marketing itself changed so dramatically.
Gotcha.
Because in 2006, that was before social media. Mm-hmm. And so it was very much here's our story, let's deliver it to you. And if you happen to go to our website, it looks like a brochure on your screen. That's all.
Yeah.
And social media became that dialogue with marketing. And the strategy that's involved now with we're able to target so precisely with marketing online. It's just completely different, completely different. And so it's interesting when you look fast forward to 2012, when the competitors started popping up. Social media meant that small businesses started to realize that that's where the eyeballs were, and they could no longer just outsource, because it's hard to outsource social media well, and tell your story well. So more and more marketing director positions or marketing positions were being added to companies which is another challenging thing when you're running, because it used to be so easy to find employees, and now it really isn't, because we're competing with every company for marketing talent.
Yeah.
So very different dynamic.
And there's a lot more creatives in greater Huntsville now.
Oh,
than
yes.
there ever were.
Yes.
As you were saying.
Yes, it's very exciting to see.
And you do feel like that.
And some great companies.
Started in 2012. You feel like it was kind of the great.
Yeah, I think so. I think those were when the first smaller ones started popping up again. And, we have a very vibrant agency community now. I have friends who own agencies.
Yeah.
And I love being able to say that. I have friends who own agencies. They're not my competitors. They're competitors, yes, but they're friendly competitors. And it's just nice to see other people doing cool work and good work in the community.
I guarantee you most of them have been on this show and have
Probably.
sat in that seat.
Yeah. Have you talked to Megan?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
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 And Lauren Goins.
And Lauren, yep.
Do you know Carl Holden?
I do.
Zealous Marketing.
Yeah, Zealous Marketing.
He was on the show. And do you know Carla Stiles from Design by Carla?
Yep, sure do.
Yeah, I was just on her Coffee and Hustle podcast yesterday.
You've had all the cool creatives.
I guess. I wonder if it's I'm trying to do my own marketing and social media and just kind of like, okay, how do you get this out there, right? And it's I guess it's easy in a way to, it's not like I'm using the podcast in a way to like pick their brain, but somehow we just kind of gravitate to one another. I don't know, it's weird, but I have had a lot of marketing professionals on, but it's also a lifeblood. You just mentioned it, right? In a way where you're seeing that more and more. Everybody has to do it. Marketing has changed, and a lot of times it's educating companies on, okay, what does that really mean today? Yeah. What does 2023 mean? And it's probably very different than it was in 21.
Yes.
Or even 22. I mean, Threads just came out. What on earth does this mean?
had that conversation at Red Sage recently.
Yeah. And actually, Erica Despain from All Things Madison, I just had her on, and she got on. It was like first day, like someone's like, "Hey, you should get on." I'm like, "Why?" And I use social media to put out my video clips and to kind of promote the show, and I get so time consumed with that. I don't really do good personally. You're a really good poster, by the way. Both the stuff that you post, which is great.
At Red Sage.
No, just as an individual, like your pictures out in nature.
Oh yeah,
and your
on my
grandkids,
hikes,
and your personal side, and on I have some stuff I'm going to show you later, but I'm like, why am I going to use Threads? I didn't even use Twitter. And it's just rivaling Twitter. So like, I don't really want to add a fourth platform because I use LinkedIn, which I think is the most intuitive. Instagram second, and then Facebook's like, I hate Facebook. But I still use it, but I think it's the worst of those. And I don't really do TikTok anymore. Sometimes I don't even think I'm allowed on. Like the US has blocked me and I can't even log in, or I couldn't even post it one time. And so I battle, and like the worst thing for me is like, oh no, now another one, Threads. Great.
Yeah. It's
now
funny.
what?
I think that's what all the influencers are saying is like,
what do we do?
What we do.
Is there a character limit? Yeah, and like, is at least on the screen, I can't even tell who's like someone, like it'll show like the first few letters of someone who's trying to follow you, or who, or should you follow them? Like I have to click on every person to see who it is. Cause I can't, there's not enough like, text. It's just aggravating. So have you, although like seriously, like have you had clients request that, or like how do you incorporate a new platform like that into your strategy or to your client, requirements?
Yep. So this is where it's going to be interesting because I am not the one that does the marketing anymore. And I am I'm turning into an operational leader and a leadership developer or a team developer. And my energy is going there. My blogs are going there. My podcasts are going there. So I understand branding really well. That's timeless, and that's really where I cut my teeth. I understand broad strategy really, really well. I know how to tell a story really, really well. If you get into the technical, what are we doing, what are we saying, and how are we using it, you need to be talking to my team because they're phenomenal and they're specialists, but I'm not in the work anymore. And I don't even post on social media much, which is, again,
yeah.
I try not to consume media. Yeah. I'm an ad agency owner, and I try not to consume media because I'm at the point in my career. I'm 55, at the point in my career where I want to focus on operationally getting my business as strong as it can be, and I want to focus on now that I've built a team where I'm not working. I mean, I still have weeks where I work crazy hours, but I have more time off now than I have more reasonable schedule. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And I want balance in my life. And I want to explore, and there were so many years I haven't had balance that it is really, really nice. The last year or two, especially after COVID, I think that was a piece of it. I think the part of my professional journey where we are with the company, the fact that we're past COVID, I'm at the point where I just want to take a breath. And I don't want to chase the trends. I don't want to know everything about the industry. I want to build a good company and hire the people that really are passionate about it.
Yeah.
But I want balance, and I want to breathe, and I want to go be in nature, and I want to travel, and I want to be on our boat, and I want to be with our kids and grandkids, and I don't want to network anymore. I don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I just really, my world at one point was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I loved every second of it. I loved being a visible leader, loved going through Leadership Alabama, loved all the big network I've built. But now my world, I just want it to be smaller, and I want to go home, and I want to sit on my patio, and I don't want to talk to people.
Well, and I would just picking up on the research that I do on guests, and a lot of it I can just pick up on through pictures. Mm-hmm. Where, you lost your father earlier in life and you just lost your mother last year.
Yes.
I would have to imagine that is essentially losing your mother, which was difficult, and she lived a great life, and you got to do some memorable things with her at the end. And you talk about just in the picture post, right, that you had to make the decision to have hospice, put her into hospice, right? that has to really play into now how you look at life.
Absolutely,
and what's important.
You nailed it. I'm so glad you picked that up.
Right?
Yes, absolutely, because my mother was incredible. And if I could talk for just a minute about
Absolutely.
how incredible. So my father died when I was 4. My little brother was 2. My oldest sister was 9. There were 5 of us. So Mom went back to school, put herself through college, became a teacher, a special ed teacher. She put all of us through school and took us camping. I was sharing with my team during a recent lunch that we actually went cross country when I was 10 years old and she drove in a station wagon with 5 of us kids packed in to go cross country with a Coleman pop-up camper.
Oh, wow.
And we drove from Connecticut to Texas to San Francisco to Chicago and back to Connecticut.
Wow.
And it was an incredible trip. But she did it because she's like, because people told me I couldn't. And I shouldn't. And it was during a gas shortage and all of that in 78. So anyway, but that's the kind of woman she was. When she retired, we were always the church family, and that was our community, was in church. When she retired, though, she started to really say, how do I explore myself in the world? And so she went on a Buddhist retreat. She became a shaman. She became a Reiki master, so energy work, if anyone knows what that is. And but she was always like that, because when we were in school, she went on an archaeological dig in Mesa Verde because she was so fascinated by architecture. She traveled the world. I have great stories about, and this is on a teacher's salary, and my dad was retired military, but she made dollars stretch. She was thrifty, but where she spent money, it was cool stuff. And so, So
she never remarried.
She never remarried. She went on one date and said, I don't really want to sacrifice anymore. I'm really having fun. So she decided, I'm not going to compromise. And I've given everything for these kids, and now it's my time, and I don't really want to, do what other people want. So she explored spirituality. She explored the natural world, always loved nature. She traveled a lot. She very big into social justice. So she was on immigrant rights walks in Washington, D.C. She mailed me an article with her picture saying 5 arrested at a peace rally. And I had to read the article to realize that she was not one of the 5, thank goodness. But
you're waiting to see her name.
I know, but she's just, I could go on and on. She climbed the Great Pyramid in Egypt when she was 75, fulfilling a lifelong dream. And when you have a mom like that, and you're at the point in your life, you're just right through COVID, you do reflect on a life well lived. And what does that look like? And I've always been big on balance. I've never been one to work 80-hour weeks or 70-hour weeks. It's rough to get me past 50 hours.
Sure.
I've had a few weeks exception in 17 years, but that's only a few. And I'd rather sacrifice growth for balance in my life. But between my mom dying, being past COVID, the stage that we're at Red Sage, where I'm not running everything anymore, I have really good people. It's really a powerful combination to say, how do I purposefully choose my time in a way that benefits my family, benefits me spiritually and physically, benefits me emotionally, and where I can do some good in other places. Yeah. So it's a nice place to be, but I'm almost kind of like shamefacedly saying, yes, I own an ad agency, and I really don't like media, and I don't really like social media. And I'm only on Facebook and LinkedIn because, I'm on the others, but I don't use them because I just don't really want to learn anything else.
Well, you know what it is? I was thinking about, I'm going to actually, let me ask you a follow-up question on your mother, and then I'm going to make a point. Did you get to ask her the question about the Jackie Robinson movie? Because I saw this post that you made.
No.
But you couldn't go to see her. Did she pass before you were able to make it home?
It was when she went. Was it when she went into hospice, or it was when she broke her hip, went into hospice, and she really wasn't. I couldn't talk to her after that, and it was pretty quick, like a week.
Oh, really?
Before and she passed, but. No, it was me coming to realize that it's time. The time is here, and I'm far away. I was going up for. I guess the past year I'd gone up once a month for a week to give my sisters, who were really doing the majority of the day-to-day care with Mom. I'm proud of how my siblings cared for her.
Sure.
And for my sisters in particular. But I'd go up and be the relief for once a week and saw the decline and was able to spend some great quality time with her. But that was wild. So when the scenario was when she went into hospice, and I had to accept the fact that I was losing her. And even though you know that you're losing her because she had dementia and she was declining so rapidly, it's quite another thing when the moment comes. And I was absolutely beside myself and just sobbing. And I was like, Dan, I just need to watch a movie, and let's make it a baseball movie. I don't like sports. I don't care about sports. And
However.
Yeah, and let's watch the 48 movie. I think it's 48. I don't even
42.
know. 42, okay. And I was like, let's watch that. And I had forgotten until I watched it. And I know there's no reason why I would request this movie. I'd seen it once before, maybe a decade before. And that night, watching it, it was about Brooklyn Dodgers, which she was an avid Brooklyn Dodgers team, stopped believing in the Dodgers when they moved to LA, but avid about that. And then with her civil rights, social justice background, that the fact that it was about Jackie Robinson, it was such a powerful, okay, mom's with me.
Yeah, like a tender mercy.
Yeah, it absolutely was. So it was, I'm so grateful for that memory. And it was really very much, okay, mom's with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention kind of the same thing. Like, it's amazing the effect that we have on our kids, or how much our kids want to emulate us or be a part of us. I'll go like sometimes to the gas station. Let's say I go to Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
And there's a guy all decked out in like Chicago Cubs gear, and then his 3-year-old, they've put him in all the Chicago Cubs gear. And that kid's going to grow up a huge Cubs fan.
Yes.
And it's because his dad's a Cubs fan. He doesn't even live, they're in Alabama now. But like somehow that got planted in your mind that you knew how much your mother liked the Brooklyn Dodgers, and you don't like sports. But in that moment, tender mercy, somehow you have the wherewithal to be like, oh, let's watch a sports movie.
Yeah.
Because I miss my mother.
Yeah.
But the comment I was going to make is in looking at your website, which here's the thing I really like about your website, and if maybe I'll just pull it up.
So old. Oh my gosh,
it's old.
It's so old.
By the way, there's Dan. There's your husband.
There's my husband.
And there's Michelle, is she the one in charge of all your marketing? The buck stops with her?
Yes, she does our marketing plan. I mean, Sarah, because she's one of our executive leaders, is very active in the community and markets us, but those two primarily, yes.
And that's probably where I've come across Red Sage, just in LinkedIn and trying to grow I work for Mantech, so Troy By with Mantech, and then there's the podcast, kind of 2 accounts, 2 entities. Abby's the one who reached out to me.
Abby's extraordinary.
I invited her to come here, and she said, "No way." I'm just kidding. I don't know. She
no, I told her she didn't have to. I got
it. But here's what I'd really like. I'd like how if I go to expertise, and let's pick up, let's do business and corporate first. Even if it's old,
it's really old.
I like
our work, just for the audience, do not judge our work by our website, period.
But I didn't know that, but I'm still going to commend you. So I like how we go through an area like, hey, M&D Mechanical, and then, there's Breland. And you're going through, like, every section, you're highlighting customers.
Yes.
Most websites, customers is kind of its own tab. You click on it, and it doesn't give you a lot of context necessarily of what you're doing for them. In my industry, it's, we're on these contract vehicles, and these are our customers. Mm-hmm. And I know some of those customers are probably not happy that you've listed their logo on the website. So you should really be careful. I know you want to be cool and strut your stuff, but you got to be careful. But I do like the way that's organized. If I click on technology, right, then a different section will come up. And I did some research. I know you were on a podcast with what's his name, the one that was like 35 minutes long on YouTube.
Adam
Torres. Yeah. So shout out to him. Picked up on some stuff there, but you are in high end. There's a lot of marketing companies, but you were kind of the first one in a way, one of the first, not the first marketing company, right? But you've been here a while. Uh-huh. And you have a certain level of quality and standards. And it may not be, I don't even know if you're the cheapest or the most expensive or whatever, but it seems you're the most expensive.
So worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at is when you're really good at something, then it also means that you're not Elon Musk and I'm just going to pick on him because he will control, even to today, right? With all the stuff he has going on, he will micromanage and control people when he wants it a certain way.
Yeah.
and not everybody has that ability. Most people don't have that ability. There's probably only a few people on the planet that can work like he does, which is insane. But you're now in developing people, but there's these processes, right? I would imagine that the amount of just what we've talked about and the processes and the efficiencies are not found in most companies.
No, and not most creative companies either.
Right.
Which is ultimately why 80% of them nationally don't scale. It's very, very, very difficult to scale in our industry. We're the first ones in North Alabama to pull it off.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've done it without, investment dollars, that we were pretty much bootstrapping every step of the way, I'm really proud of. It's very, very, very rare.
So, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is from day one with Dan, you guys have built a quality company.
Yes.
Right?
We have.
And it's extremely efficient. I'm thinking about my buddy who built my deck on a house I had in 2005. And I'm like, hey man, you're never like in the yellow pages. They used to, back in the days when we had the yellow pages, they kind of still had that, or they would be like, in the county we were in, they would have the best deck builders. He was never listed. He's like, I don't care. He's like, I know like my quality, and customers will come to me, and I know my cost, and I'll give you an estimate. And I'm gonna if it's gonna take me 2 days, it's gonna take me 2 days. I'm not gonna be there for 2 weeks, right? So he's built this reputation, and he's like, and if you don't like my price, then go have somebody else build your deck. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But if you want a quality deck done right, without any hassle, whatever, then you choose me.
Yeah. Or
you don't choose me. And so for every customer, and I was one of them, where I was like overjoyed because my deck was done, and it was a big deck, and it took them like 4 days. And I look at all my other neighbors, and it's taking weeks and weeks to get it done. And that's why, and I told 9 people, right? That's the proverbial or the famous thing, right? If you're happy with a product or service, you're going to tell 9 people. I told everybody, I told 90 people, if you want a good deck, you go to Loudon Deck and Fence. But you know that you can stand behind what you've built. The processes are there, yes. The people are there, and you don't have to work a ton of hours because you're constantly instilling in others, right? Your culture,
yes,
and your
absolutely.
mindset.
It's so hard to. It's funny. It's not even about the efficiency. The efficiency. It's more about the how do you keep track of all of the details. But here's where we've grown. We're not a project shop anymore. Mm-hmm. So we'll still do a standalone website. We prefer if it's wrapped into branding and digital campaigns and all of that, but we'll still do a standalone. People don't call us for a brochure. They might call us for a digital campaign, but we're going to talk real hard about let's get through branding first and understanding who you are and the brand message and who you're trying to reach and the purpose for why you want to do this anyway. And so if you look at, we're an integrated marketing agency, which is different from a lot of our competitors in North Alabama. The level of expertise in understanding how do you really, really, really hone in on understanding an organization, mm-hmm. its values, its differentiators, where it wants to go, where it's been, what's going to resonate with its client base, the strategy that's wrapped around how you're going to reach the 3 different client bases that you're trying to reach, because they could be quite different. We have one client, Artemis Shielding in Fort Payne. Their clients are nuclear facilities, airport equipment, scanning manufacturers, mm-hmm. and aerospace, and healthcare, because they have lead-free radiation cladding or shielding. And so you have very, very different strategies for that. So the level of business knowledge, of understanding the tools of the trade, which are like 10 times more varied and complex than before. I mean, I don't know how you do generalist marketing anymore. I really don't, because we need somebody who only does social. We need somebody who only does digital. We need somebody who only does SEO web. You have to have people that know that piece of marketing, because there's too many pieces for one person mm-hmm. to know. And so to do that, you have to scale. Well, that's a lot. And then if you have 4 different accounts people, you have a team of, like currently we have a creative director, 2 artists, we have social. That campaign and that message of what the client wanted has to be so seamlessly delivered to every person in the company, because literally 80% of the company can touch a client's work. And the majority of those people are doing the work and producing the vision, but they weren't in the meetings, they didn't hear it. Well, how do you distill down all this incredibly important information to do really quality work, capture the details, provide the oversight level, and really do your instructions well, your handoffs well? We have Figma boards where we see all the work for a client to make sure that the branding is consistent and it doesn't start to decay over time as different artists pick it up or time goes by. So things like that. So it's not as much efficiency as much as it is how do you keep it all crystal clear and handle the pass-offs efficiently so that the work is delivered and actually accomplishes the vision and achieves the results for the client. So it's interesting because we don't build the fastest websites, or we build fast websites, but we don't build them in the quickest amount of time. So it's not about the time it takes us to do things. It's about the handoffs, the touch points, and the details that we have to make sure. And then the strategy is different for digital. It's different for social. It's different for what do we do on the website. It's different for let's do this pop-up campaign. So it's just a lot of complex messaging, strategy, thought work. And then how do you keep it straight across 18 people?
Yeah.
When we're all working together to produce it.
Let's talk about arguably, I'm going to assume is a complex account, Mazda Toyota.
Yes.
Because I've interviewed Mark, great guy.
I love Mazda Toyota. Mark, Jessica, I love Mazda Toyota people.
We started the episode not even talking about cars. They had to protect that little pygmy sunfish. And they had to figure out, because these are indigenous, or what are they? Is it indigenous? Yeah, indigenous.
Endangered.
No, endangered, and there's another word.
I think it is indigenous to the creek. Yeah.
But there's another word where it's like it's only found there.
Yeah.
In that water. So indigenous maybe to Alabama, but then there's what's the word? Gosh dang it.
Rare.
It's rare. Yeah. It's like, well, no, it only lives there. It only lives in that part of Limestone County. It doesn't live anywhere else. And so they have to figure out how to protect the environment as they build this plant. But okay, so here we have Mazda is a company and Toyota is a company, and they get together and they want to do Mazda Toyota Manufacturing. Difficult to do. I'm sure that those things have been done in the past, but these two companies talk about efficiency. They represent the best.
Yes, that's
There's
right.
nobody better than Mazda or Toyota when it comes to building cars. And now how do you get the account? And then I have to imagine there's some complexity on, okay, what is the message and these employees, and are they more Toyota than Mazda? How difficult was that? And is it even to this day?
No, it's not difficult because their leadership team is so crystal clear on their shared purpose and vision.
Awesome.
So how we got the account, it was actually unusual. It was almost casual. We won it, but now when we win big accounts, we typically have to pitch and do a lot more work to show that we're ready and capable to do the work. For Mazda Toyota, the very first thing was a guy who he wasn't a local guy. I think he was part of the startup team. And his job was to come and find a local marketing company to develop their logo.
Okay.
So they weren't talking about anything, but we need a logo. And so I got an email saying, hey, with Mazda Toyota. And we're like, yeah. And he's like, because of course all the economic development announcements had gone out and it was very top news everywhere in the state. And he said, we're looking for local companies. Can you just show me examples of your logos? Didn't ask for pricing, didn't ask for process, just send me over some examples of your logos. So I'm like, okay. So we sent him a bunch of our logo examples and he said, that looks great. So how much will it cost? So I gave him a proposal and he's like, okay, well, you guys got the work.
Wow.
And so it was weird because it was and it's so different from our relationship. We're so tied in with Jessica and Mark, Jessica in particular, that it's funny to think of the early days of that account because it really wasn't much of a relationship building sales process like we normally have. Mm-hmm. It was very much a send us this and now send us this and okay, you got it. I'm like, okay, well, that was easy. That's cool. So we start with the logo, but when we start with the logo, they share with us their values and their mission and their vision. and educated us on how this was going to work and what their focus was going to be. And they're so purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
They're so purposeful. Everything has a purpose. Like even like on their plant facility, there's a portion of their logo that has a blue line running through it. That was inspired by a facility tour we took when we were planning the logo. And the single production line that runs through the entire facility where the cars are produced, there's a blue line on each side of the building signifying the start of the line on the exterior facade. So that feature of that's where the work is done. That blue line is where the work is done, and that's a feature of their logo. But it's easier to do brands for people who really have a clear vision of who they are. It is shocking how many companies through growth lose track of who they are and how they've changed and how do they really tell that story. And I mean, Red Sage, we're vastly different now, and we have to retell our story every 3 years or so, and our website doesn't show it now, but and it will by the end of the year. But by the end of the year, but it's just really interesting when you're doing branding to have that clear vision and purpose. It's easy. Yeah. Because you're designing something to capture that, and it's so clearly defined. It tells you what style, it tells you what features, it tells you how it needs to feel, it tells you everything, really, that you could incorporate then into a design. So that's where we start. And then started working with them primarily on recruitment campaigns, but we also do internal comms, safety videos, and other materials like that. And that's also fun because, again, the crystal clear vision. One of the other reasons that I should have mentioned about why we got the logo, they were very, very, very passionate about, we are a member of this community.
Yeah.
And we are going to use local people. Mazda Toyota, they could have gone to Nashville, New York, California for a marketing company. They chose to stay in this community and find a local company to work with. And we don't have large agencies in North Alabama. We're the largest now. But
congratulations.
Thank you. We're the first ones that have made the shift into mid-level management and slightly larger.
Yeah.
But it's just really, when you have that level of focus, it's just a lot easier to do marketing. So when we were talking, and Michelle tells this story best, our director, our vice president of sales and marketing, she worked very closely with that account in the early days and defined a lot of the vision. And she said, they just keep saying, we're just going to deliver. We're making a promise to this community. They said that over and over. We're making a promise to this community. We're going to be a good partner. We're going to have good jobs and good wages. And we're going to have a really good culture where people matter. And all the stuff that is just wonderful, for somebody who's a admirer of well-run and good leadership, well-run businesses. So they're saying all of this and they mean it. They really do mean it. And so when we did the first video that really kind of captured the vision of what they had achieved, it was going to be unveiling the car. And it was showing that all this work of the building the factory, here's the first car. And the theme that Michelle came up with, because she is so brilliant with words, was a promise delivered. And if you look back at the early videos, a lot of that was it's a promise delivered. And it was inspirational, but it was totally driven out of their mission, their values, the way they talk about things, and captured the personal feel of a brand. So it wasn't, look at this awesome car.
Yeah.
It was, this is what our team produced as members of this community, because we promised this to ourselves and to you and to our community. Yeah. And we've delivered that. And I mean, if you don't get like chills on stuff like that, that's when marketing's awesome. When you have like that clear vision and mission and can pull it off and find the words, like just 3 words, a promise delivered.
That's cool.
And really kind of weave it together, find the right music and get the right clips of their employees looking happy and giving each other high fives. I mean, it's just
genuine.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, this reminds...
It's an honor to be involved in projects like that.
I've got a few comments. One, this reminds me of Rob Hamilton, who is the chair of Launch 2035, right? And that works for Ignite. He was the FBI. He was FBI at the time, and he was the executive in charge of ushering. He was the first one sent here to pave the way for the Bureau coming here.
Wow.
And building the second headquarters. That was his job. And unfortunately, Sarah James, her husband, that he was Rob's right-hand man. until he died. And so that was, talk about telling the story, all these episodes coming together, right? Sarah, we talked about that in her episode. And then Rob's was shortly thereafter. But he, the community, the city, the chamber were also wanting to make sure, hey, Bureau, are you going to be good citizens here?
Yeah.
We want you to frequent our restaurants and our businesses and our, we don't want you just to kind of go to work and go home.
Yeah.
We want you to be a part of this. Are you committed to that? And I think same thing with Mazda Toyota, and talking with Mark was, hey, we're here to be a part of the community. And I would have to, and the same thing with the Bureau, my job, my normal job in business development, I was told very early on, hey, everything you do, you need to really involve the community. So I hired a company last year to have like a commercial made that we've used. Yeah. We wanted to use a local company. Could I have reached out to our corporate people in Virginia? Of course. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. Let's spend the money.
Spirit.
Let's have a small company do this. So I'm assuming that Mazda Toyota and their experiences, lessons learned from the past, they may have failed. And I'm going to bring up a contrasting point here shortly where there was a failure and you guys saved the day, where now they know. Don't bring in your fancy company from San Francisco that does whatever for you. Only the local people know how to recruit their own folks. Now, related to that, I'm assuming, were you also recruiting the suppliers? Because I found that to be fascinating. At that plant, the suppliers are kind of there as well, right? And that's how they are so good at what they do, because it doesn't take long to get a part because your supplier is already on site. So on one hand, you're recruiting, I guess, the employees for Mazda Toyota, but are you also working on Mazda Toyota's behalf in a way to attract suppliers to come here and be on the campus?
Not on Mazda Toyota's behalf, no. But when the announcement was made, a big portion of our business at that time was really in economic development. So, in fact, we work with the majority of the economic development groups around the state of Alabama. So we were doing automotive supplier recruitment campaigns for local communities. So we built More in Morgan, a website and a marketing strategy for Morgan County to recruit automotive suppliers. So it was really more the economic development activities for the other communities who wanted those suppliers to come and be in their town.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So somewhat indirect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing how many overlaps in what we do. The different industries, and we bump into them, a good bit.
All right, so I kind of teased it. And I'm going to pull up a picture first, or I'm going to pull up this, which I love. Okay. Decatur Daily.
Yes.
I'm going to read what I can see here. After a failed 2019 attempt, the city council will make another effort at marketing Decatur through a $162,500 annual contract with local firm Red Sage Communications. Then it's kind of cut off on there, but let's just skip ahead. Prompted by the One Decatur Comprehensive Plan, the city made a failed attempt at a branding campaign in 2019. The previous city council hired Big Communications, I can't read all that. I guess they're based out of Birmingham.
Yes.
And so their campaign was a little different.
Yes.
Quote, talk about 3 words, right? A little different. And that didn't go over well with the people in Decatur. And so the city lost the $117,000. They basically got nothing for it. And they regrouped and they said, let's not hire someone from Birmingham. Maybe we should hire a local company. Ooh, Red Sage. They've been in Decatur, right? Ooh, they live here. They do marketing. You're 13 years into your company at this point. Let's hire them. And then in you come. And then let me just bring this up.
You have all kinds of things there.
There you go. Positively Decatur. That is the output, right? Or the result of that initial money to get going. And now they're your account.
Yes.
So we've reduced it from 3 words to 2. And that Positively Decatur now is positively historic, positively caring, right?
Yep. And if you flip those, there's even more entrepreneurial, trend setting, all of these. Yes.
So here's what I'd like you to do. I always I try to imagine myself like in the boardroom or in the war room of a company when it's time. Okay, you win this work. I guess actually first, if you can talk a little bit about how was that a difficult process to be selected, by the city for this campaign? And then more importantly, after that, I'd love to hear about those initial brainstorming sessions. And what were some of the other ideas thrown around, and really kind of get into the how did you pull this off?
Yep. So,
because I think it is phenomenal.
It's a little different. So, and thank you. I think it's phenomenal too. I'm excited about this campaign. So, I love living in Decatur. Mm-hmm. I can talk so long about all the things I love about living in Decatur and how I've seen it grow and develop over the past 10 years. I won't, unless you keep asking me, in which case I'd be love to jump all over that.
It's your episode. And we can talk as long as you want.
I'm very involved in the community. I've been involved as chamber president. I've been on a lot of the nonprofit boards. I've marketed healthcare, schools, everything about the community, and the thing about marketing is you brainwash yourself, because if you market everything positive about a community, you think it's the greatest community in the world. And I really believe that. And so by the time we did this campaign, I'm embedded in every part of the community. I love this community. I'm a Yankee woman who comes to Decatur, starts a business, and all I've felt is open arms. Decatur is very much a community that's easy to insert into. If you play well with others, have good ideas, are visionary, there are so many smart people that are really down to earth and laid back while they do it. I love the vibe there because it's just casual.
Yeah.
You're doing these incredibly visionary, community-changing things, but it's just a really casual, funny, sense of humor vibe that the leadership has there, which is really nice and smart. Very smart people there. But so I love this community. We bid on the initial branding project, but there was very much a perception at the time of we've got to do it right, and right means you go with a large agency. And there's no large agency in North Alabama. I was actually relieved that we didn't get it, because I have a love-hate relationship with branding for this very reason. If you saw Florence, which happened after Positively Decatur, I don't know if you're familiar with that. So Florence went through a rebranding. And it bombed, absolutely bombed, worse than Decatur. I think it even made Jay Leno. It was awful. Community branding, it is really, 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 I'm sympathetic to big. Sometimes you nail it, and we've nailed it before, but other times you can't. How do you possibly convey what makes a space or a community unique? How do you possibly do that in a single logo mark? Or, unless St. Louis, okay, they have the arch. There's things like that you could work in that are iconic, that really make a community stand out. But we've done community branding in a bunch of communities, and they're like, well, we have really great people. We're by some water, and it's really beautiful here. And it's a special community. Well, everyone says that, and everyone has that, because everyone loves their community. So branding is notoriously hard. So I watched the debacle. And I am sympathetic to Big, and I hated that it didn't work, because it's my community and I want the best for it. But, at that point, community branding, even though it's part of the city's community strategic plan, the One Decatur plan, it is written in there as a top priority. Nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole because of the baggage and the mockery and the debate. The community just would get so up in arms that there's no way to win. There's no way you could revisit and call it branding. So this was not a proposal that came out of the city. After the dust had settled, probably a year after the big thing. And
so this is 2020.
Probably.
Or 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess it had been 2019. So 2018 is when the big thing
It might have been
south.
2019 or 2020.
Okay.
So it was probably a year and a half before we got the award.
Okay.
And I called the mayor, who I'm in Rotary with and I'm friends with, and I'm like, here's the path forward. You can't do branding. You can't call it branding. And the only way to do it, what you guys need to do, is say, we just have to tell our story. We just have to tell our story. Call it a storytelling initiative. Focus there, because then it doesn't have one slogan that people will get divided by. You're not trying to find this ethereal one thing that makes your community special. But Decatur has a perception problem. It breaks my heart that the survey of how people look at Decatur is so different from how this community is that I live in. And we have to tell our story because we have to change this perception of Decatur and into this place where it's people think it's negative. It's, crime. It's this, and it's not. And so to change a perception isn't a logo. To change a perception is you got to tell the stuff that's good that's happening, and you've got to do it reliably and consistently. Mm-hmm. And you've got to change how people think about a place. So a storytelling campaign I would get behind every day of the week for a community over branding, because it gives you so much more room to work. We came up with we had an initial planning session.
Pull it up.
We had tourism. We had economic development. We had the schools. We had hospital. We had the chamber. We had United Way there to represent the nonprofits. So we had all the community people as a stakeholders planning meeting early on. And we actually brought them the logo and the phrase and said, this is what we want to do. Because positively Decatur, it's really hard to spin that negatively. It's not a slogan, or a tagline or a brand. It's a storytelling device. And it like checked every single box. And so
whose idea? Was it yours?
Yes, I spent months on my boat writing names and putting names down and possible things. And yeah, because I just simmer on something like that. So that one was mine. My team usually comes up with stuff like that, but that one's mine. And our art director pulled off a beautiful logo that was a good word mark that was gritty, which Decatur's a gritty place. But it's accessible and friendly. I love everything about it. So rich colors, it really does capture what Decatur is. And we came up with characteristics, and these are the things where the stakeholder committee was helpful. So again, we had a starting point of, this is what I know from the community I love. We're number one in the state for entrepreneurship, one of the top incubators in the state. We are one of the most diverse communities in the state, so we should celebrate our diversity. The fact that we have people from so many different backgrounds, skin colors, ages, is really something that I think builds richness in a community. We have amazing outdoors with Wheeler Wildlife Refuge and the river. We have arts, Carnegie. Oh my gosh, Carnegie, the art college. We have a 4-year art college. Most people in Huntsville don't know that, but we do. Right next door to our Decatur office. We have the Princess Theater with all the music. So the arts between theater, music, and just visual arts is amazing in Decatur. It's a really, really cool community with that. Let's see, what else do we have? We have Trendsetters, home of the nation's first wave pool. We build rockets there. If that's not trend setting, that's right. I don't know what is.
The ULA.
Yeah, that's right. And Dynetics. So we have all these things, and we have, I think, 8 qualities. If you pull the website up, we can look at.
Go down.
So outdoors, that's Wheeler Creative. The entrepreneurship is the one on the top, and those flip if you roll over them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So outdoors, diverse, creative. Entrepreneurial, caring. We have so many nonprofits and so much giving back in our community. The trailblazing piece. Historic, so much civil rights and Civil War history. And then it's just fun. There's so many fun things to do. We have one of the best tourism groups in the entire state. Shout out to Danielle Gibson. She's phenomenal. And so many attractions with Point Mallard and events and fun things to do. So we just tell stories. We have guest bloggers. We have we pull in a lot of the news that those are just third-party curated. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't really show you all the good stories. And I mean, the headlines that Decatur was recently, by the numbers, the number one place people in Huntsville were looking to move. One of the most cost effective in the country. I mean, so many great headlines that we finally have about our community, and so much growth and development that we've done with all these smart people that have been working for a very long time to transform Decatur. And it's happened. The perception hasn't caught up yet. So anyway, I pitched the idea of just focus on the stories and do that. We came up with the criteria, and then we just started saying it's hard to narrow it down because there's so many good stories to tell. We have a steering committee that helps us make those choices. The first year was a lot of it was different. The first year, it was really trying to be very balanced about every aspect of the community. So we talked about the Robotics Center, which is in the city of Decatur limits. We talked about Jack Allen and our state-of-the-art soccer fields there. We talked about a lot of things that are more like locally sense of pride building. The first year, we were very much focused on we have to change our own perception. So the 3 people who are so negative and loud on social media, they start getting drowned out by people sharing and telling positive stories
The
and
haters.
celebrating it. Yeah. And so the first year was focused on drowning out the local haters. And we did that very well. It really did accomplish that. This year, we're focused on, we've got to change the outside perception, and we're really looking to tell stories that are going to make people who don't live in Decatur raise their eyes and say, wow, I had no idea. And that could be a place that I want to check out.
Yeah. I find John Joseph to be one of the smartest people I've ever talked to.
I adore that man. He is a very dear friend of mine.
I am so happy when you guys won the incubator. You guys, Decatur, Morgan County, right? Us.
Yeah.
When we won the incubator of the year.
Yeah.
Which is just it's just phenomenal. Is it just I don't understand either. Why, like where I used to live in Virginia. We just moved from an area. We were there 5 years. And when I would go to work, I had a bit of a commute because I kind of kept moving west. It had a stigma, like, oh, you live out there?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what's wrong with out there?
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure. I can never really put my finger on it other than it's just too far away. But is it, you come across the river and people see the factories and.
It could be.
Is it that? I have to say, whoever can be the first to develop like waterfront restaurants and whatever
They're
entertainment.
Coming. Did
I know.
You know that?
I hope it is.
It is.
And
the developer of City Harbor in Gunnersville is doing the same development in Decatur on the river, but
Excellent.
Bigger than City Harbor. So it's going to be close to you. So, that's coming.
Because that's always anybody who's used to, even Pittsburgh, right? That you have those beautiful rivers come through the city, and in DC and other, there's rivers everywhere where there's these beautiful restaurants that overlook the river. We always want to be on the water. You have a boat, and that seems to be one thing that's coming, right, to the region more and more. I've heard of a friend of mine who's trying to get a boat club, like where you would join the club, like a golf club, like Burning Tree in Decatur, right? You join a golf club. Well, you join a boat club. You don't have to own the boat, but for $300, $400, $500 a month, you have access to certain boats on certain days. I was like, man, I would love that.
Yeah.
Because we've been going down to Smith Lake and renting.
Especially if someone else does the maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you don't have to own the boat. You just join the club, right? And you probably get it. You reserve whatever boat you want. Like, those are the types of things that are coming. And man, that would just really put Decatur on the map even more and more if they could be the leaders, right, to that. Because I think the water is closer.
Yes.
That waterfront is closer than if you're going to go further south or go to Gunnersville, right?
It is. It's a challenge having the industry along the river, but there are still places where industry isn't along the river. We have Point Mallard, which has beautiful land. Rhodes Ferry Park overlooks the river. That's where the steamboats come when they travel. And are you familiar with that? We have steamboats
a little bit
that come. So they make regular stops and travel around Decatur. The people get off the boat and travel around Decatur. So
like dinner cruise type stuff.
No, it's traveling through. So
just
it's
travel.
like,
okay.
Yeah, it's
a point on there.
Yeah, it's a point on their. Yeah, I think they go everywhere from Chattanooga down to New Orleans. I'm not really sure, but
got it.
But we're a stop, and so we have places that can be developed, and the will is there. It's just the time, and of course, it's private development, so you've got to have enough momentum in other areas before somebody's going to fork out a bunch for a riverfront, development of some kind. And that's what's happened. I mean, we've had, oh my goodness, I forget how many million, we're probably well over 200 million now invested in our downtown. Over the last 10 years, it was like, desolate 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And now it's beautiful. It's thriving. And you go down and people are walking on the streets and it's historic and it's cute and safe, and it's really, but that was the catalyst. There's people who downplay making an investment in a downtown, and you should be spreading that money out everywhere, but you have to have a focal point. You have to at least have a gem somewhere, and you could develop the other stuff around it, but you need one gem that people start coming to and start visiting and start building momentum around, and then it starts filling in around it and getting better. So with downtown redevelopment, I think that was the catalyst to a lot of the good development that's happening in Decatur. We have developers who developed the Gulch in Nashville, who one of the guys who is the developer from Nashville graduated from Decatur High, and he's chosen Decatur as the city where he really sees so much potential. We have downtown modern apartments that are being built left and right now. We have a hotel coming downtown, a lot happening. But it's been the catalyst to a lot of the other growth. Science Museum now, four-year art college now. None of that was around 10 years ago.
You made me think of, I've mentioned this on the podcast before, so apologize to anybody that I'm going to retell a story. But have you heard the story of the Sydney Opera House in Australia?
I have not.
It is fascinating. Huh. And it touches on exactly what you're saying. So they have this stigma of the British colonies used Australia just as a prison back in those days, right? And so the best way to offend an Australian is to call it POMI, prisoners of Her Majesty. And so that was a penal colony. Well, so all along they come, time has gone on, and they're a country, and in like the 50s or 60s, they're like, you know what? We are kind of nothing on the world stage. We need to do something. Mm-hmm. What can we do? And Sydney was like, we should build the most unique structure. Something that when you see, like, the Washington Monument or the Arch in St. Louis, it's undeniable. Yeah. Or an Egypt, a pyramid somewhere. Iconic. It's iconic. Yeah. We need something iconic. We want to bring arts and entertainment to Australia. We need to be something. What are we going to be? Let's talk about their strategy as a country, as a continent. Yep. Right?
That's bold.
Bold. So they start. There's this whole when people. I don't like when people say long story short, because it's like, well, you just said the long story. Like, is it a long story or is it a short story?
Could have been longer.
But it's just this nervous tick that people do, like, long story short. Like, just tell me the story. But I think he was Norwegian. He submits. They have a contest, worldwide contest for the design of what ultimately is the Sydney Opera House. He submits a design, and they're like, and it just gets passed over, and it gets passed over to the point where now they've gone through all these rounds. They don't have one they want. Somebody remembered, hey, you remember that one that was a little bit weird and controversial? And they have to go find it. Because this is all paper back in the, whenever, 50s or 60s. I can't remember the timeline. But so they say, yes, this is it. And they contact, the designer, and they're like, how are we going to do this? He's like, I have no idea. Like, this is just, like, I think we'd actually have to invent some technology. Like, I'm not sure if it can be done. I'm just giving you a concept of what could be done, right? Well, they wanted it to cost $7 million in 3 years, and have to take it 3 years to build. It ended up costing $107 million in 25 years to build. It almost bankrupted New South Wales, the province. Wow. The city. It was awful.
Can you imagine the local politics?
Oh, the guy was thrown. He was thrown out of the country for this radical design. They had to invent the socket system when the shell's like blow in the wind. They invented all of this technology structurally to make this happen. But ultimately, after all of that, they succeeded. They now have a structure. When you see that, it's the Sydney Opera House. Yeah. And the acoustics, the guy, even though he was like exiled and he was welcomed back later, much later in his life, he wanted to work on the interior and the acoustics, and they brought in this crazy wood from Brazil or something. And if they've had all the bands in the world want to play in the Opera House because the acoustics are supposed to be the best. Yeah. And I've been inside of it. It's like some sort of birch wood, but he didn't get to have a part in that. But they did succeed. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, the politics, it was bad. It was really really bad.
The world does not go easy on visionaries.
No. But I always think about that when it comes to, it's one thing for a city. Hey, how do we become known? How do we get over the stigma? What are we going to be about? How are people going to refer to us in Decatur, right? And so just know that those people, it's not easy. And I don't know who, anyway. So we've talked a lot about Decatur, Morgan County. I'd like to talk a little bit about Huntsville Botanical Gardens.
Yes.
And that is because, let me just pull this up. I think I have it here. And I'm not sure if we'll get to Drake State. But when you look at the top destinations, and I think this is somewhat in order, but hey, it's up there. It's number 2. How long have you all had the account?
A couple years.
Couple years.
Yep.
Were they always in the top destination? What are you doing for the gardens? And have you helped them to kind of increase the exposure to that? When tourists come here to know, oh, we should go to the gardens. Yes, there's a Space and Rocket Center that seems to be very well known. There's some Big Spring Park, but what role have you all played in raising their profile?
Yeah, so several things. I think where we've made the most impact is really the event promotion of what's going on at the garden. So a lot of the social media advertising, the videos that we've done, and just the marketing online of their events. So things like, any of their events, the Galaxy of Lights, for example, of how do we really greatly increase. And again, this is where my team would be so much better because there are so many good numbers we have, but I am not. So you're getting a disservice by having me be the one presenting this. But I do know for sure that I know that we have numbers that we're very proud of on that account. But it really has been very much how do we get more people in the doors to experience how beautiful this place is. The garden is incredibly well run and very, very visionary leadership team. The events that they have there are incredible. I mean, just incredible. Stickworks, the nests, everything that they do is so immerse yourself and interact with nature. And it's sculptural and it's exploratory and kids love it and adults love it. They have swings you could swing on and in full swing in that exhibit. And it's always something different, and it's always so interesting and playful and technical. Like, how do you build these big structures and stickworks? And the community can get involved in building some of it. Companies can get involved in building some of it. And to me, it's such a treasure. So I think our role, I don't know that we've thought about where have they come up in the ranks in Business Alabama, but I am going to do that with my team. Like, where were they before we started and where are they now? They've always been one of the top 10 because they're just extraordinary.
Yeah.
But I do know that the attendance has gone up a lot. We also have helped them with their legacy giving brochures. So I don't know the data on that as far as has their legacy giving gone up. That's a lot of the purposeful fundraising efforts. I'd give as much credence to as what the print material looked like, frankly. And they're very savvy. They introduced, and we helped them introduce a magazine. So the twice a year magazine that they have, the columns. So in that, they do a really good job planning it. Again, they're organized. They understand. They just tell a story well. And I mean, they're in this gorgeous garden with things going on all the time. I mean, what's not to love about that?
With the butterfly house?
Yeah. So, but it's educational and interesting. The magazine talks about all the events coming up. So you have the calendar. It has some advertising, but only for them. Like, remember, you could have your wedding here and things like that. But they had an issue on, I think it was Columbines. They would one on hostas. So even learning about the plants and more scientifically from a botanist viewpoint is just very interesting content. It's long form, not a lot of long form content on the online world in print. And so the idea of a magazine that's tactical and you could hold it in your hands and it has beautiful pictures and you could, see what's coming up and encourage you to go, but then you're also learning about the natural world and you see that what they're doing is not just fun and beautiful. It's also really developing this great respect of how do you care for the natural world and coexist with it, and what can we do to make it more friendly for birds and for bees and all of that. And so they do a really great job of showing their mission in a lot of different ways and different mediums. And I think it's actually bold for an organization to say, we're going to invest in a print magazine. Yeah. I think that was very, very shrewd, because that's a different market. It's something that you don't skim by it. You don't scroll through it. It can be there on your counter or your table or your coffee table. So I really admire a lot of what they do.
It's cool. The Botanical Gardens, I was kind of thinking today, I've got 4 kids in my, 3 have graduated high school now. My oldest is...
Congratulations.
Thank you. 24. My youngest is 16. But the other day, my daughter, I think, went on a date and at the Botanical Gardens. And I just think, like, in a way, how cool it is to have a resource like that here.
Yeah.
Where we all go back to when, we were dating and maybe engaged, and you kind of like, what is there to do? What is there to do? What would be a fun thing to do? And as a guy, where you want to get some bonus points for kind of thinking out of the box and take the lady to the Botanical Gardens rather than maybe like just the natural thing. Let's go to a movie. We'll do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe your aunt or your mother or someone's like, you should think about this. You really want to impress her. You could go to the Botanical Garden. What are we going to do there? And then you're going to go and have a great time.
Yeah.
Because I've done both the walking tour of everything, and I've actually done the golf cart tour with my mother, who's getting up there and doesn't get around well. And we've done both. We did, and then we drove through or walked through the Christmas lights.
Yep.
Which was awesome.
It is.
And it's right there.
I know. It's like our Central Park.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's there for us. It's beautiful. I mean, I remember moments of magic with my kids when they were little, like in the Asian pavilion thing.
Mm-hmm. The lily ponds and stuff?
The lily ponds. There was a duck that laid eggs there in a flower pot, and they were hatching when we were there. And, moments like that magic happens. And if you're lucky enough and go there, you could see it happen. I mean, it's just really cool. So, yeah, I love that. There's just so many memories of, going there. I mean, I remember bringing my kids there and climbing through big flower pots. I remember the tree house time where they had tree houses built, and that was so fun to just climb all the tree houses and explore those.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of playful exploration of space, and it changes. It's like these pop-up things that just come play with these huge pop-up things that are so different from anything you've ever seen.
Yeah.
So in the midst of this gorgeous landscape.
And how cool for you to come back to and to have them be a client.
Oh, I know.
Right? You take your kids somewhere, and never did it probably cross your mind that one day you would be helping them to increase their tourism.
It is
and
true.
I look at traffic.
But see, I feel like that about so many of our clients. I mean, I admire these organizations so much. We have Launch 2035 and Singing River Trail. We have Huntsville Botanical Garden. We have Drake State. What a great story. Dr. Pat Sims, such a fan of hers. We have Hudson Alpha is a client. Huntsville Hospital System, helping with their web properties and how does that translate?
And speaking of that one,
things.
It's now HH Health.
HH Health, yes.
Now, was that done in order to really kind of draw on the South Tennessee market and not have it Huntsville based and just kind of call it HH Health and remove Huntsville from the name?
Well, it's a trend of healthcare nationally. So I go up to Connecticut, and it's a Yale New Haven hospital. Baptist Health is in Kentucky when we go visit family there. So the idea of health systems
and
for really, with there's just a lot. Adventa, I forget what they're called now. We looked at a whole bunch of Centura Health. It's health systems because healthcare is such a hard thing to even break even in. That the more you can economize costs and then service delivery, because communities can't support small communities lose their hospitals. There's just not enough to support it. And with modern healthcare and technology and recruiting, getting physicians to locate there. So coming up with a system of delivery where you have your cardiac and your neuro and things that are very high level that are at the central hospital of the big city.
Sure.
But then how do you really streamline and benefit healthcare? Because a big hospital cannot have everyone driving there. We have to have strong community hospitals so people can stay in their community and get good healthcare. And it's actually better for the system to invest in all of the communities versus invest in one place where you have to drive 2 hours to get healthcare.
Yeah.
So the idea of system, it's cost savings, but it's also, I think, efficiencies. It doesn't make sense for every single system to get the latest and greatest huge machine that costs like $200 million.
Yeah.
When that's something that probably the population could be serviced by just buying one at the main hospital and so forth. So I think there's just a lot more efficiency. That's another industry. I would hate to be a hospital administrator. I think marketing was a disruptive change industry. Yeah. You look at healthcare, and I don't know how they still have hair or teeth.
Know.
It's I have so much admiration for them, and actually education during COVID is the other one. I was just like, yeah, I couldn't do that.
You know, a couple weeks ago, I was at the Huntsville Generator. They did a beat, you know, the not Huntsville Generator, which is and they're with G Beta program. So Donna Ehart was here on the program, and then I went to their event. So similar to like the launch tank that they had at Athens State for Singing River Trail. Did you go to that by the chance? Or were you aware of it?
I was aware of it. That was when we were scaling like crazy at Red Sage. So no, I wasn't like going out for anything.
So that was cool to see, you know, Shark Tank style presentations and really getting these entrepreneurs used to the pitch, right?
Yes.
Making their pitch. So they did one through Generator, which is a national company, and then they have they have a Huntsville. I'm going to call it a chapter. It's not a chapter, but they kind of by cities, right? They have it into different cities. So there was a guy, I can't remember the name of it, but his concept, which I thought was brilliant, was, and he gave this example. If you go to the beach, so if I went to Gulf Shores this weekend and one of my kids comes to me and has a raging earache or they're sick, what do you do? Like, I'm in Gulf Shores. I guess we get in the car. We do some quick, you know, urgent care near me.
Yes, that's right.
Right? That type of thing. But this system is kind of two-way. So on one hand, if you're a provider, you're giving this information and you're gonna giving the office hours or the insurance you accept and all this kind of stuff. And then as the patient, you I guess, you know, through, you know, the type of insurance you have, it basically, you go to an app and it would tell you, here's your options. And you're going to drive here and they will take your insurance and they're open and they have all, like, you don't have to have that moment where you're trying to do all this research when you're worrying over your child, you know, or whoever
you keep that up to date.
I don't either, but I just thought like, wow, that would be revolutionary.
Yeah. And
so, of all the pitches that night, that one really stuck out. Like, wow, there's something there, because as sophisticated as we are, we're still kind of back to what's near me, right?
Yeah,
we just Google stuff and it's cool. You get a map and it might send you there, but now you have the whole aspect of, okay, well, what, you know, who are the doctors and maybe there's all this information that could be presented to you.
Yeah.
That we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
I want to show you some pictures.
Okay.
Well, actually, you know what? No, I want to talk about Drake State real quick.
Okay.
And so when you're doing a website for a university, and I know that there must have been you were part of the rebranding.
Yes.
Maybe getting away from just community college and saying, okay, we're community and technical college.
That was their founding, actually. They were established as a community and technical college from the early days.
New logo? Did you help them with it?
Yes.
Okay. It looks pretty cool.
It is cool.
I like it. So when it comes to universities, every college, every university has a website.
Yep.
Right away, I look to the right here. I'm trying to anticipate, okay, what are the standard, okay, if I went to a university website, I would expect to see career services, something on parking, a student portal, of course, the course catalog, transferring. But the things that stuck out to me as being different now that it's 2023 was first, Lyft, Ride Smart at Drake State. So like, okay, Lyft, Uber, whatever it might be. Veteran and military affairs, interesting. Depending on the school and the demographic, and maybe you have some adult students or former military. And the other one that really stood out was student complaints. Did you do a lot of talking and to figure out how to add to these menus, change these menus? Like, what was the, you know, the interactive experience that might have been missing that you helped them see? Can you talk me through like what you guys did there?
Sure. So the thing to understand is university websites are massive. There's so much information. So when you're planning a website, particularly one this large, it is really important to understand user and user flow. And so we're not really worrying so much about all the tiny little pages, because if you start building your big structure, it's almost like building a house. It's a lot easier to place your faucet after the frames go up and the walls go in and you know where your counter is going. So with the site architecture of a website, it's really, you start always with who are the people, who are the personas, the people that you're going to, that are going to be accessing your site, and what are they looking for? So Drake is a great example of that. It's not just students. A lot of times they're going after high school students, but then it's the parents, and the parents have a whole different set of questions that the students have. So understanding what is a parent looking for, what's a student looking for. You have faculty. You have people who are vendors that want to do business. You have, for someone like Drake, all our community colleges are so into workforce development that very important to be a tie with local companies, because they're building or they're providing the training for the welders of tomorrow and industrial maintenance, industrial service, automotive technicians, all of these things. Healthcare. Drake is huge in healthcare, a partnership with Huntsville Hospital to prepare more nurses because there's such a nursing shortage. And Drake's really one of the ones at the forefront of that. So you have to think about these different audiences and what are they looking for, and start with the big buckets. It's easier if you can look at other websites to kind of get a sense of what works and doesn't work. And that's a big part of the research that you do when you kind of come up with the structure. From there, it's really thinking about the user flow. What do you want them to do? What's the person? What are they looking to know? What do you want them to do? What do you want them, even if they don't know that they need this, what do you need to make sure they see? And then how do you get them there with as few clicks as possible? And so a lot of strategy goes into site architecture. A lot of work goes in on the front end of a website, a large one like this particularly. We're doing something similar with the Land Trust right now with just understanding their personas, because they have, everyone from educators to people who are looking to go outdoors. I mean, same thing. What are they looking for, and how do you really streamline the journey?
Land Trust North Alabama?
Yes. So how do you streamline that journey? And it's really starting with who's coming to it, why are they coming to it, and where do you lead them? So it's just a process of mapping that out. By the time you get down to little information, it's almost like making an outline. If you get your big buckets right, it's pretty easy to slot individual pages in. So I doubt that we even had to think twice about student complaints, and where to stick it, because the structure was built and it makes sense. If you build a good structure, everything fits. That's what I also like about branding. When you know, if there's a brand hierarchy, like a master brand and supplemental brands, or a product hierarchy, when you know you have it, when every question you could throw at it, you know exactly what to do and where it slots in. And that's when it's just very satisfying.
There you go. You geek out over it.
I absolutely geek out over strategy. Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's I know in the little time I've been here, there's, because the defense industrial base is here and other contracting entities, right? We're all trying to pipeline the younger folks,
yes,
high school, college, and there's this in a way battles and wars over how we're going to get this talent to come work for us. And so then there goes to, okay, the institutions of higher learning. Okay, well, Alabama Huntsville is big because Alabama's big. But what about Calhoun? And what about Athens State? And what about Drake State? And what about Alabama A&M? And now we have the cyber high school. And then we have the New Century, I think is another one. And maybe Decatur has one that I'm not aware of. But there's just, at least on the cyber side, right? There's this tremendous push and investment going into having labs and all this experience so that these kids will be ready, right, to come work for these companies in this area.
Yep.
And I can see that with the competition, if you will, for the grant money and for donations, right, from different companies and just different. We're always we actually have something with Georgia Tech. Huh. Mantech does. And so, I'm trying to get them to say, well, what about this? I've got some ideas of things that we might be able to do, right, for kids, and ultimately just trying to prepare them, so that we have strong workforce going forward. All right, I want to show you some pictures. Now, all of these came from your Facebook,
okay,
I think, and there's some fun ones. And I think you took an art class or something.
Yes,
do you remember?
Paint. I do oil painting.
Okay.
So that actually was one where I'm painting of a photograph. I had graduated beyond the art classes and started saying I want to produce original work. So that was a picture I'd taken up in, I think, Connecticut or Massachusetts.
So that's your version, and you just copied what you saw?
I took a picture of it when I was
Oh,
traveling.
I see.
And then I had my picture on my computer, and then I painted.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
And
still,
my style is very messy. I like messy.
it's cool.
Thanks.
It's yeah. What do you call that? Like rustic, like
Palette knife.
palette knife. Okay. Well done. Now this is a grandbaby.
Yes.
I love this shot.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that is little Charlotte. That was right before she started screaming and decided she didn't like water. Charlotte is coming to visit me next week with her mom Rachel, and we are having her 2-year-old birthday party. So, yes.
And she was probably what, 6 or 7 months in that shot, or even younger.
It was also the one time we met in whoops. Didn't mean to slap that. We met in Florida for one of our nephews was getting married, and we got a house, and my sisters brought my mom down, and that was the last time she traveled was to see Charlotte. This pool was at the house, and my mom held Charlotte for the
That's a great photo.
Yeah, it is. She's a cute.
Now this is you and Dan.
And that is my position on the boat when I'm there. I'm on my love seat, my wicker love seat, and I'm looking at the water on this side, and there's a blue heron there usually. And
Which lake is this?
This is Joe Wheeler State Park.
Joe Wheeler State Park. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
And this is the position you're in when you came up with like positively Decatur.
Actually, it would have been, yes.
That's cool.
Yep.
And what's he's like on his iPad? It looks like he's reading. Is he a reader?
Yes, he's a reader, but he's probably researching how to rewire the battery system
Gotcha.
at that time. Yeah, he's an engineer, so he's always researching some technical thing.
Now, here's shots I just would love for you to comment on that I just think are amazing things that happen in nature.
Yes, so that's on the path at Joe Wheeler. That's where I walk the most. There's a 8-mile path that I go on, 4 one way and 4 the other. And I like stuff like that too. So that's a vine wrapping around, and gradually the tree starts growing into the vine. So, but yeah, there's really cool things like that. There's surprises. There was another hike. I don't know if it was this one, but I have another one where I usually, like, I'm a fast hiker. I like to stride, and I just like to feel free. And
you want the wind,
like the wind.
You're trying to create wind.
Like, I'll back that. Yeah, exactly. But there was one hike where I decided I'm going to go slow this time, and I'm going to look for details. And so there's one where I found crazy details, like a horseshoe in a tree hanging on a branch inexplicably in the middle of the woods. Things like that are really cool. But there's a lot of, that's another reason with the botanical garden. I mean, there's just surprises in nature.
When you first happened upon this tree, you probably thought that was a snake. No. I was like, whoa, what's this? What's going on here? Like, okay, all right. What do we have next? Now,
that's the horseshoe on the tree.
Okay, there it is.
In the middle of nowhere. So that would have been the detail hike where I was actually going slow.
Gotcha. Because you can't see the other side of it.
Right.
So I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, it's just this random horseshoe.
That's cool.
Kind of draped over a branch.
I'm not sure how many of these I have. Now, I just like this shot.
Yeah.
This is a trail.
Yep, that's the same trail.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like it because look at the bark on the right.
Yeah.
Look at the texture of that.
Yeah.
And then just like the green canopy and the green tunnel, and I'm an armchair Appalachian hiker. I don't think I'll ever do it. Appalachian Trail. I don't think I'll ever do it, but I'm thinking about going backpacking for the first time next year and exploring that as a way to stay fit in retirement at some point in the future.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not going to stay fit if you just float the Great Loop.
Exactly. Although I'd like to do that too.
You're the second guest who's mentioned that's on like their to-do list.
Yeah.
Is to do the Great Loop.
Yeah, we said that, and we said it aloud, and it floated there for about 3 months, and then life started throat punching us. So so we kind of got a really clear signal it was not the time.
All right, I got 6 questions. Well, I got 7, so I'm gonna call it 6 plus 1.
Okay.
And I haven't done this in a while. I used to call it the quick 6, and then I don't know.
This is like in the actor's studio.
What's that? In
the actor's studio. Do you remember that show?
No.
Oh, he would do that at the end. He'd interview these actors, and then at the end, he'd be like, "Well, okay, here's my rapid fire. What's your favorite swear word? What's and
mine,
people had to like just answer."
I won't. Mine. I'm just one of those people. Like, if you were to ask me what's your, I don't have favorites.
Yeah,
I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, well, I do like blue and red.
I know. I'm like that too. I enjoy a lot.
By the way,
things.
red sage. Red is the color of victory. But it's also, what's your definition of red? I know you mentioned something different when you were talking to that gentleman, Alex. for red sage. Sage advice when we come to the
sage
company.
is smart, but red is. I wanted the company name to mean something. Red is my favorite color, so I wanted it red. But red in marketing, the whole point is to stand out in marketing. So red stands out. So and then sage is sage advice. We try to be smart and strategic with what we do.
Gotcha. And I wrote this on purpose.
And I wore a red wedding dress.
Oh, that's right.
Because I like red this much.
That is cool. I'd love to see that. Is that picture on your Facebook somewhere?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, so I write down these questions, but as much as it's easy to be like one word answers, I kind of want to know more than that.
Good, because I can't do one word.
Yeah. So all right. So the first one. Do you have any phobias? What's your phobia?
Not really. The closest I come, and I'm really embarrassed to say this, is I am a typical girly girl in only one area, in the fact that I don't want a cricket or a spider anywhere near me. I don't mind frogs and snakes, but like things that like could be in my space and like crawl on me, I don't like that.
Okay. Now I realize now that you can't answer this next question with the logical answer. Has to be so.
I'm a creative.
Let's say that you come across a Model T, you and Dan, an original Model T, but you don't want it to be black. You want to paint it a different color, but it can't be red. What would you paint this Model T? If it can't be red, because I'm taking red away because I know it's your favorite color.
Yeah.
Or you could paint it red with a stripe. What color would be that stripe? We could do it that way.
It had a stripe. It would be black just because of boldness.
Just a black stripe.
Otherwise, I like blue or green.
Okay.
Natural colors.
I wonder how many Model Ts are left.
I don't know.
Probably more than we think.
Probably.
Right? Give me one regret you have. Doesn't have to be just a regret when you think back on life or your career.
I wish I'd been a better leader early in my company journey, and I was learning, but I should have promoted faster. Although there's reasons I didn't. I really made a bad decision in a hire once. That was the first time I tried to hire a leader, and I really regret that I didn't know that I needed to take a different approach. So it's really more leadership failures where I just really feel like looking back that should have been so obvious, and it wasn't. And, but you're young and you're starting a company and everything's fun and you're focusing on all the things you have to deliver. So I guess you miss them. But
yeah,
I regret when I let people down. And if I let my team down because I wasn't a good leader, anytime I do that, that's my deepest regret.
Now, I don't know how well you know your family history, but is there an ancestor that you would love to have met that you never got to meet, but you heard stories about this ancestor?
Can I borrow one from my husband's side?
Sure, of course.
I mean, my family's really cool, but my grandfather I knew. He came over from Italy when he was 17, and I know a lot of his story. So I already know the ancestor that I really would go back and want to know. But on my husband's side, we have a picture, a old black and white picture of his grandparents on their honeymoon. And he was a botanist. He invented burl tobacco.
Oh.
And so my husband's family and my family is really smart people. And his family was, he had this naturalist guy. So he takes his wife on a camping trip for their honeymoon. So they're outdoor people, but you just think of all of the old pictures as very posed and nobody smiles.
Yeah.
And this picture is this man who's like relaxed, his arms crossed, like just smiling down. And she's like in her dress, like just kind of like laughing at him. And you don't see that. And I remember later when I realized that the old people in the pictures that weren't smiling as his grandparents were the same people, because I just imagined this glamorous life. So I want to go back and know them then.
Yeah.
Where they were captured in that picture because it was so atypical.
That's cool.
And I also want to know like more about how he approached, like he also, I don't even know I wonder if there's any fallout for this, but we have a tin of tobacco in our house that he had invented. So of course he did whatever you do to invent plants. So he came up with tobacco that was caffeine free, not caffeine free, that was nicotine.
Oh, wow.
And so it's in, and of course that would not go over well with tobacco companies because then people stop smoking it.
Mm-hmm.
So, it never really went anywhere, but we have that in our closet. So I want to know more about his scientific studies because it's just fascinating to me, and I don't know anything about agriculture.
Was this like in the 40s?
I don't know.
Okay. That's cool.
They were old. Yeah. Really, really cool. So yeah, I'd like to know them.
All right. When you do go on the Great Loop, just give me an idea of 3 things that you are top of the list you're going to take with you.
That I'm going to take with me.
Mm-hmm.
Dan.
Okay. Well, a deck of cards, like.
So I don't get very attached to things. So I would take my binoculars. I would probably invest in a camera.
Okay.
And I might take painting supplies and small canvases so I could paint while I'm out so I don't get bored.
And
and I might take my straps, like, those fitness straps with handles that you put behind a door. Yeah, I might take those.
Just a little exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody doesn't know what the Great Loop is, basically from Maine to Florida, you'd come down the eastern seaboard, come back around the Gulf, and then go up in the freshwater, right? All the way back up?
Okay, fun fact.
Yeah.
So the Great Loopers Association, well, let me explain the loop, then I'll come back to that. But
okay.
We would leave from Decatur, from Joe Wheeler. We'd go down the, Tennessee River to the Ten Tom. There is a Gulf crossing. The one overnight crossing is across the Gulf, and then you could choose to go intracoastal waterway or around. A lot of interesting things there with what water rights and property owner rights. You don't want boats anchored out there. There's a lot of legislation you have to kind of be on top of. Then you could decide to go up the intracoastal waterway, which is probably what we do. Then the choice is, do you go through the Chesapeake Bay or outside of it? And that would be a hard one. I think I'd go through. Keep going up. You'll go through New York Harbor, past the Statue of Liberty. That would be cool. I forget the river, but there's another river that goes up. And you start getting into the Great Lakes. You can go into the Canadian lock system, which I really want to do. I am excited about the Great Lakes area too. Then come down Mississippi, which is everyone's least favorite part of the journey. And it's a loop. So the whole eastern starboard of the United States is navigable. And it traditionally is about a year, but then you have people that take their time with it or do it in So, but yeah, that would be really cool.
That is awesome. Okay, this is one I love to ask people. We didn't really get into your music taste, but here's the scenario. You are not with your husband. Usually it's like, I will say, like your besties, just like, maybe you're catching up with some old girlfriends or something. People you're comfortable with. You're in the car. It's a summer night. Let's say it could be tonight. And you're driving by the Von Braun. You're downtown.
Okay.
Huntsville. A concert's letting out. Or otherwise, there's just people everywhere, and you want it to be known that you're playing this song very loudly, and you're singing like karaoke style. You don't care what you sound like or what you look like, but you're cranking this song that everybody in the car knows, and you're just having the time of your life, and everyone's going to see this spectacle because you're driving by. What is that song?
So the answer to that would be very different to the typical songs that I would pick if it was really just me in the car chilling.
Okay.
So if I have someone in the car, the only one that I sing at the top of my lungs with, absolutely crazy nuts, is typically my daughter Emily. And we do there's 2 songs. I play 2 because there are 2 that we lose our voice over. Literally after just 2 songs, we sing that loud. And one is Total Eclipse of the Heart. Yep. And the other one is Les Mis, One Day More. Where we do every one of the parts really well.
One day more.
Yeah. You have everything in there, and we do everything, and it's really good.
I love, speaking of Les Mis, I love, was it Red and Black or Black and Red, whatever that song is? I love that song.
That's a good song. Yeah.
I saw Les Mis in London. And I used to travel a lot for business, and I saw Phantom and Les Mis and all these things without my wife, by myself, but I love Les Mis. I love the soundtrack.
I do too.
All right, last one. Who do you root for?
Who do I root for?
Not a sports question.
Okay,
Who do you
good.
root for?
Anyone trying to pull something off that's not ordinary. Anyone with grit. That inspires me. And I want them to succeed against all odds, and I want them to do really cool things.
All comes from your mother, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, Ellen, it's been a pleasure having you.
Oh, it's been fun.
Can you believe we've been talking? You want to take a guess? Don't look.
2 hours?
2 hours, 17 minutes, and 30 seconds. It's amazing. It goes by, doesn't it?
It really does.
I was thinking about, I love long form.
Yeah.
I love to be able to explore different things. I was thinking like we were 42 minutes into it. I'm like, oh, you're already 7 minutes over the record of whatever I've heard you on, like 35 minutes with someone. Like, that's nothing. Like, we are just getting started. So, do you have any final shout outs or any really important highlights you want to mention?
No.
Okay. We'll break this up into 2 parts. So I haven't figured that out yet. That'll be just in the magic of editing. I've got an intern helping me from Auburn this summer.
Oh, that's cool.
He's getting course credit. I love, even though this isn't like a thriving business yet for me, it's a great side hustle that I hope will be more. I really enjoy. The same thing happened to me when I was doing my live streaming. I gave an opportunity to a high school kid, and he was awesome. And he basically became like my right-hand man. And we accomplished so much together because he liked the broadcast, but he also liked the set building and stuff that we did. And so he got credit at school, and it's helped him in his career. And I was just a local guy, and he, wanted to be a part of it. So here's someone from Auburn, right? Like,
yeah.
Every now and then I have to like kind of pinch myself, like, wow, I'm like helping college kids get credit. And courses, and I have their professor emailing.
My high school entrepreneur kids.
Oh, that's right. You just hold on.
That's the one thing we didn't talk about.
Let's
that
talk
I'm
about
passionate
it.
About.
Let's talk about it because I think I have. Let's see. Is this picture right?
Yes.
Where you were just okay.
Yes.
So give some context to this.
All right, so I just rolled off as board chair. I'm still on the board and will be on the board for a long time of Decatur Morgan CEO. And I helped bring CEO to the community where it came. First of all, CEO programs are entrepreneurship programs that were founded 10 years ago in Illinois by an awesome guy called Craig Linville. And so the Midland Institute for Entrepreneurship is over expanding all of these entrepreneur programs. Jason Green, Dr. Jason Green at UAH, he's the Dean of Business. He had lived in Illinois before he came down to UAH, and he had been talking to John Joseph, of course, about the program and how it would be really cool to start a branch of it here in Alabama. And John talked to me because I'd been telling him for years that we cannot wait to teach entrepreneurship when people are in salaries with benefits because they're not hungry enough. You've got to teach it early. You've got to get them in school. Mm-hmm. And also the students who might be latent entrepreneurs but don't have the means to go to college or don't want to go to college. How do you identify the entrepreneurs in your community? So John and I have been talking about that for a while. And so Jason came over and talked to me and a couple other business people. And I loved it. I was just like, oh my gosh. I met the guys from Midland Institute. Actually, there's a lot of women there too now. But it's an incredible program. The thing I loved about it, there's so much I love about it. So the things I love about it, first, it's not theoretical. The students have to start businesses. So in the fall semester, they're doing it as a group. We do a 1 to 100, take $1 and turn it into 100 by, selling. You can't just like con people into giving you something more. You have to actually do something with the money to get to the next one, then sell it again, get to the next one. So the idea of being creative and coming up with concepts and making money off of concepts very quickly to practice entrepreneurship is a good one. That's the first thing they do first month. They do a large group business at the end of the second semester. So these could be, we just graduated our 4th class, I think. Fourth. But all kinds of businesses. During COVID, the kids started a drive-in movie theater and event and had movies. We've had Santa Run 5K. That was pretty profitable. It was a fun night for Christmas on Bank last year. And then one group of students started a T-shirt business, which is the first product-based, not event sponsorship run. So I really consider it more of a real business that they did that year. But they have to figure it out. They have to write business plans. They have to understand what a P&L is. They have to understand cash flow and revenue. They have to make a profit. And then in the spring semester, they each start their own individual business. And same thing. I mean, we had 5 kids with business licenses last year. So it's not theoretical. They're paying taxes, they're starting businesses, and every one of those students is keeping it running. So it's, I love that because you see the transformation of students where early in the year, there are some that sign up because they're fascinated, but they are introverts and they are shy. And students these days, or young people these days, don't know how to shake your hand. They don't know how to have a conversation with an adult that's not driven by the adult.
Yeah.
And so the soft skills they learn of being able, like by the end of the year, you would swear you're at a chamber event because somebody will come in the room and 3 kids will go over and start talking to them and asking them business questions and saying, hey, guess what I'm working on? And it's just really amazing, the growth in the students. So I love that part of it because there's not a whole lot of ways for students to fail. There's not a lot of ways for them to have to do it. Like, it's on them. Nobody's doing it for them. Nobody's giving them a gold star. It's like, you do it or you don't.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's you. And they don't get that a lot. There's so many safety nets in everything that we do. So that's wonderful. But then the other thing I love is we're identifying entrepreneurs in our community that either aren't going to college, don't want to go to college, or maybe they're going to go to college and come back to start businesses, which is building the business environment and the economic base in our community. And so it's a long-term game there because we're just seeing our first kids will graduate this year. And, we'll see how many come back. And that's also our first year, and it takes some time to develop a good program and so forth. But I like the fact that it's an economic development tool. I like the fact that it also is more likely, and they're trying to work on the data for the tracking of it, and we're doing it with our own kids, but it's more likely that students will return to a community. And there's a huge problem with young people going to cities and not coming back to their hometown.
Yeah.
But if we could start to make them feel connected and to see the employers, most of them have no idea the diversity of employers in a community. And they hear from 30 to 40 speakers and go to 30 to 40 business visits of all kinds. It could be retail, it could be manufacturing, it could be a law firm. To really see how do people do businesses and what are the challenges and what is leadership like. And they're learning about, the legal entities and the choices there. They're learning about taxes. They're learning about leadership, even some HR, how to stay motivated when you're dragging. I mean, so many things that they have to learn because if you think of running a business, it involves everything. It's a very wide set of tools that you need to at least be familiar with.
Yeah.
And in the course of doing that, they're tied into the business community very, very tightly. And I'm still in touch with mentees from the last several years that I've mentored in the class because they also get an assigned mentor. And it's just the more ties we can create to potentially have them come back. I've seen kids now working for companies that they toured that went through it because they were like, that kid's got it.
Yeah.
And so the employers are seeing it. It's not going to be a huge workforce development tool, but it's one more tool.
Yeah.
And these kids are impressive because they've learned to think outside the silo of this is what I want and this one thing that I want to do, to understand the business pressures and to ask the why behind a lot of it, or to really understand the impact of you're telling me to do that and here's how it fits into the whole big operational picture.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating program and wonderful. I'm on the board of Midland Institute now in Illinois as well. And there's a lot of parallels between how I've scaled my company and how we're trying to scale that organization now to expand the CEO program across the country. But it's
cool.
A wonderful program.
Yeah, I was thinking, if you're in school, you have to realize that, okay, yeah, you can get a business degree at the BS level or you can get an MBA, but it doesn't necessarily mean that
it's theoretical.
Everything you're going to learn is going to transfer to, running a small business or even being a part of a large corporation. Exactly. And that's why you do these things. So number one, you have to tell the people in school, hey, let's give you an opportunity to do something so you can realize all the stuff all the gaps that are not being filled, right?
Yeah.
While you're in school. And then also for the people like, oh, well, I didn't get a degree. Like, okay, well, you don't necessarily have to. Let's get you going here, and you might tap into stuff that's just part of your DNA.
That's right.
Right? And then you might have to get a degree later because you need the credential or something like that. But don't assume that just because you're not in school that you're not learning some valuable thing where you don't have the natural, propensity to do it anyway.
Absolutely.
Because when I think about like I have a MBA, but when I think about all of my schooling, like accounting was probably one of the only courses where like there was like a sole proprietor part to like accounting, where you really were like kind of thought like a small business. But like when you're talking macro and microeconomics, like, yeah, there's principles of economics that can spill over, but or marketing, you might just end up like on some case study with Walmart. And a lot of times the things you're doing don't come back to, would I be a good entrepreneur?
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
And that's where like, okay, it's just because you have a degree doesn't mean, you're just going to hit the ground running.
It's like learning medical theory and expecting you'll be a good surgeon.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they have practicums and they have residency and all that, right?
Yep.
Well, that is awesome, and congrats. So, by the way, who is this in the picture with you?
That's Scott Mayo.
That's Scott.
Yeah,
okay.
He's over the Cook Museum of Natural Science. He's the former headmaster for Decatur Heritage Christian Academy. So he's been on our board since the get-go as well. We have an incredible board, and he's one of the board members.
Got it.
That we have. So he's
let me close with one. I've been meaning to tell you this the whole time, and this goes back to the comment you made with how accepting North Alabama is.
Yep.
Decatur for you to come. You're a Yankee,
Huntsville
right?
As well.
And Huntsville, right? In Madison, where Joey, when I was talking to him, he's very matter of fact. You've met Joey, right? You've worked with him, and he was like, Tommy Battle is from Birmingham, and Mayor Finley is from Kentucky. Now, if you're not born under the right magnolia bush in Mobile, you're not working, or you're not working you're not going to be the mayor.
Yeah.
If your dad wasn't on the Mardi Gras committee, you're not going to be the mayor. Like, that's the way other places work. Where here, it's much more, hey, if you got some ideas, we want to hear them. If you want to get involved,
I love North Alabama.
Get involved.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And that whole magnolia bush thing just cracks me up.
It's true, though.
But it's true.
Yeah. We're lucky.
We are. Well, thank you for being on the Our Town podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And it's been an absolute pleasure. As I told you right when you sat down, I was excited to interview you. You lived up to it. I knew that and we still like kind of rushed through some things. But man, I'm really impressed by the Positively Decatur. I hope you have t-shirts. If not, you should get one, because I would buy one. I'd wear it. You've done some good work.
Thank you.
You should be proud.
I appreciate
and the
it.
Mazda Toyota, when you scroll to the bottom of those websites and it's like powered by Red Sage, that's cool.
Thank you.
So
yeah,
good job.
I'm proud of it. And that's our team. We have a great team.
And thank you for helping to just continue telling the story for this podcast in North Alabama, and me being new and learning. It's a thrill to continue to connect the dots. Like, oh, she knows this person and knows that person, and they're a client, and this is awesome. And say hi to Dan for me.
I will absolutely.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.